beyond. For Kennedy, much depended on the United States going to the moon, beating the Soviet Union, being first, winning the Cold War in the name of democracy and freedom, and planting the American flag on the lunar surface. Just 5 weeks later, Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. Writing the president's obituary in Aviation Week and Space Technology on December 3, 1963, editor Robert Holtz, who had been at the Collier Trophy ceremony that October, predicted that when a NASA astronaut walked on the moon in less than 6 years' time, Kennedy, America's 35th president, would be honored as a spacefaring seer whose eternal marching command to his fellow countrymen was forward. Even though Kennedy wasn't alive for the fulfillment of his May 25, 1961 pledge to a joint session of Congress to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth, the marvel of television made it possible for more than 500 million people to watch the historic Apollo 11 mission in real time. And I was one of them. On July 20, 1969, when Neil Armstrong gingerly descended from the spider-like lunar module, the Eagle, with his hefty backpack and bulky spacesuit, becoming the first human on the moon, I cheered like a banshee. I was only 8 years old that summer, and watching all things Apollo 11. From the nearly 200-hour galactic journey out of the Space Coast of Florida to splashdown in the Pacific Ocean became my obsession. I didn't miss a moment of the long, nerve-wracking chain of events that led to the Eagle establishing the moon base Tranquility, named in advance by Armstrong. I vividly remember our astronauts planting the American flag on the lunar scape, bouncing on the desolate moon's surface, handling instruments, and procuring moon rocks. My family lived in Perrysburg, Ohio, and we considered Armstrong, from the nearby community of Wapakoneta, essentially a hometown boy. It was stunning that this local kid, who grew up on an Auglaize County farm with no electricity, was leading America into the new world of lunar exploration. When Armstrong said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," every member of my family was awed at the instantaneous greatness of it all. We were hardly alone in realizing that Apollo 11 had changed all who watched it unfold or lived in its wake. I was proud of my country. For years, I longed to hear Neil Armstrong describe what it was like to contemplate Earth from 238,900 miles away, to explain, in his own words, the thermodynamics affecting motion through the atmosphere both in launching and re-entry. Former Johnson Space Center Director George Abbey of Houston, now a colleague of mine at Rice University, once told me that many NASA astronauts felt that looking at Earth was akin to a religious experience. Did Armstrong agree? What did it feel like emotionally, spiritually, to stand on the surface of the moon? Armstrong's reticence was legendary. He was known to be media shy, but I hoped to persuade him to talk with me about his storied career. Perhaps I could get him to reflect in fresh ways on his lunar experience. In 1993, I wrote him requesting an interview, enclosing signed copies of my books, Dean Acheson, The Cold War Years, and Driven Patriot, The Life and Times of James Forstall. I got a polite postcard rejection of the "not now, but I'll keep you in mind" variety. It wasn't until 8 years later that NASA afforded me the privilege of interviewing Neil Armstrong for its official oral history project. I was surprised at and honored by the chance to speak in depth with the first man, and thrilled when the date was set for September 19, 2001, in Clear Lake City, Texas. Then, 8 days in advance of the big meeting, I saw the horrifying collapse of the World Trade Center towers on TV and listened to accounts of the 2 other disastrous airplane hijackings. A pervasive sense of gloom and urgency enveloped America. Like everyone else, I felt shock and repugnance at the ghastly scenes of our nation under attack, feelings that still burn to this day. I was sure my Armstrong interview would be canceled, but it didn't play out that way. To my utter astonishment, a NASA director telephoned me.